follow Dominic because he's covered everything quite loudly as well. I want to just drill down into the announcement of this review and why it's not what it looks like and why we should not get too excited about it. I will just read the key paragraph, which is section 3 of the announcement, which says, which is the scope. The review will not revisit the rationale for current interventions in the strategy. Can we just get on with what we're doing and you can come in later? Okay. Okay. It will be a prospective, not a retrospective view. It is not a review of badger culling. Now, we've been in touch with Number 10 and various insiders in the government to say, why isn't it, what does this statement mean? It is not a review of badger culling. We've had a fairly slippery reply, which says, well, it doesn't necessarily exclude it. It just means that it's not just a review of badger culling. Well, I was 12 years in politics. I know what political bullshit smells like, and that is political bullshit. But the most important thing is they are telling us they will not review the rationale behind culling, and it will be prospective, i.e. forward-looking, and not retrospective. Well, how then can it be a review? Something that only looks forward and not backwards defies the definition of a review, because the word begins with re, which means looking backwards. It is absolutely vital that we push for the badger cull to be fully included in this, and for the rationale for the badger cull to be examined once again, because there is no rational explanation for wanting to try and remove 70% of a species when you know only 3% of them are actually infectious, and there is a very high probability that you will leave the infectious ones out in the wild, and all ones that don't have a TB will be left dead on a slab or in the incinerator. It does not make sense. It is not a rational policy. We must insist that the rationale behind the policy is examined again, because it does not make rational sense. We must also make sure that it is retrospective, because this is just the government trying to exonerate themselves from the blame for all the mistakes they've made in the policy, not just with culling, but with all the other bits of the policy to do with TB. One of those is the lateness with which they adopted annual TB testing for herds in the high-risk area. It took them years, literally nearly decades, to get the point, when Wales got it 6-7 years ago, that every herd needed to be tested once a year, at the very minimum. And they didn't do that. And why have they, for instance, not used gamma interferon in the high-risk area? They have used it, they're literally, it's less than 150 cases have they used gamma interferon in the high-risk area. It's more than 10 times that in the low-risk area. Why? And why are they only using gamma interferon in the areas where they are culling? Well, I will tell you, because they know culling doesn't work. And the only way they can make it look like it might work is to use the gamma interferon test, which will lower the incidence of TB in herds in the areas where they're culling. And then they will try and confuse the results, as they're doing already with the Brunton report. They're trying to say that the Brunton report says culling is working. And the Brunton report says quite clearly in the first 2 paragraphs, there is no evidence that it is working. This is just a statistical modelling exercise, and it should not be relied on. And yet Minette Batters, at a meeting with me before Christmas, cited the Brunton report as indicating, and she used this word, a seismic drop in TB cattle herds in the cull zones. Now, she was challenged on that, and I was at a meeting with the landowner, and the landowner walked all over her. I didn't need to say an awful amount in the meeting. But that is the lie that is being told. If the government actually had any clear evidence that culling was working, they'd be standing right up there on this building, their building, not the NFU building, and the NFU would be right next to them, waving the evidence. But they haven't got it, and they know they haven't got it. And so here's a quote from the NFU. Just had some elections to see who's going to be president, and it's now Minette Batters. But here's Mr. Charles Sercombe, who's standing for Vice and Deputy President, said, "We have got to work our backsides off to make sure Gove does not change his position. because the minute he's on edge, we do not want any reviews, because if we get to that stage, we will struggle. Right? Minette Batter said Michael Gove is going to call a review of all TV policies, so the culling is in a very difficult place. And why would she say that to her own people? Why would she say, if we get a thorough review, we're in trouble? Because she knows, the same as they do in DEFRA, that there is no evidence that it's working, there is no justification for it, and there is no rationale. So we need to take this fight to them. We must not sit on our laurels. We must not allow this review to be a whitewash, which is exactly where it's going at the moment. We must take note of the fact that they are consulting about culling badgers in the low-risk areas, because that tells you what's going to happen. They're already deciding that they're going to go ahead, which basically means they've already worked out what this review is going to say before they've started it. And it won't have finished by the time the culling starts again. So it is complete political bullshit, it is manoeuvring, and we will fight it to the end. And I hope you'll all be with us. Thank you.